And we are live with today's 220-1101. That's the Core 1 A+ study group. This is our pre-show. We have about 10 minutes before we get started. You can see the clock is there on the screen as we are making sure things are okay here. We are recording. Cameras look good. Audio looks okay on the internet side. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody is doing well. We are just settling in to make sure that we have everything ready to go for today's study group. Obviously, this is the pre-show. Once the study group starts, you'll be able to answer questions from the Core 1 exam, specifically the 220-1101, 1101 version of the exam. So a little different than the 1201, but only a little bit. We'll talk more about that as we get into the study group, and if someone wants to go on a deep dive in the after show, we can certainly do that. Let's see. Do I have my QA? I think I have all the QA turned on, so you can, of course, check that now. Make sure you are on the page. If you would like to add your digital push pin, I guess I should display those. There we go. On the map, so we can see where people are plugging in their maps there. Look, it's Timothy's birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Timothy. Happy birthday to you. There is lots to go through today. I've got all new questions, of course. That'll be fun. New performance-based questions. I'm trying to get them a little more focused in on a similar style, but the exam keeps changing things up. As soon as I have the style set up, the exam tends to update things. And so, of course, we update things on our side too. We will figure it out, though. We got a lot happening here. We can close this window. This video looks good. Video checks, camera checks look pretty good. Let's do a quick check. You can kind of see me flipping through my cameras here. Those look very nice. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody is doing well. We have quite a bit to go through today. Lots of good content. Let's see if I can. Wimbledon X Network Plus Study Group B. You can always check the status of the study groups or any live events at professormesser.com/calendar or the events channel on our Discord. Both of those places are good resources for all of that. There's a bit of construction going on just outside the studio, literally on the other side of the studio. So if you hear odd noises during, I should say, odder than usual noises during this study group, so that means they're doing stuff out there. I will pretend that it's not happening, but you may hear something leak into the mic. Hopefully not. This mic is very directional. If you just come off the axis just a little bit, you'll notice that it is very, very directional. I can't go too far away from the mic. This is by design. Oh, let's see if what else we can get through here. Do you watch this before having studied? Well, I guess you could, but you're probably going to not do as well as you would if you had studied. But since you're here and it's live, why not hang out? You'll learn something as we go along. You can't help. And I go through these questions and give you a lot of detail about the answers, or at least some detail about every answer. So you'll have at least a direction. So if you get one right or get one wrong, you'll know why you got it right. You know why you got it wrong. And we'll go to the next question. So there's always something. Plus, there's always good questions in the after show, whether you've studied or not. I think the after show applies for whatever you might be doing. Will there be English subtitles for the new series? Yes, there will be. One of the things that you may have noticed on our previous exam, our previous courses, is that all of the videos we put on YouTube have been they have human added English subtitles. So that's why all of our closed captions are so spot on, because the people that write these captions are watching the video when they write the captions. It's a little service that we do. I usually put the videos out, though, let people see them. They sit there for a week or two, and then we start on the closed captions. That's because there are times where a video needs to be updated. Something didn't work right in post-production. Maybe I said something that could be more, that I need to add more clarity or update a little bit. So as soon as the videos are online for about 2 weeks, they're pretty much where they're going to be, because you guys are really good at telling me when I get something wrong. You are spot on. I know immediately you're the best QA ever. So whenever I get that feedback, I go, oh, yep, I messed that one up, or the edit didn't look good, or the transition was funny in that one. And YouTube doesn't give you a good way to simply replace the video or modify the video. You have to nuke it. You have to completely upload a brand new video. So that's why. And that's once it's up for a couple of weeks, then we start work on getting the transcripts written. And that takes a couple of weeks because someone has to sit there and type along. And then fortunately, when they finish their transcript process, it's automatically available on YouTube. So there is a little bit of an advantage there. We'll have to work on other things there. Oh, you can have a setup like this. You just buy 1, 2, 3, 4 monitors. You load them up. You're done. That's pretty. There's no rocket science here. It's really, these two are usually completely turned off. They're just never on if there's not a live stream or if I'm not recording, because this one is my streaming screen. It's a 27-inch screen that I've got set up just to show me the status of the stream. That's a little bit overkill, but I wanted it to be the same screen as the one I use for video switching in case that monitor has a problem. Then I can easily switch them and still have a monitor that I can see. They could be smaller, but then you start to lose. It's easy to see the big boxes on the top. It's these little boxes on the bottom that are the challenge, and that's why. That's why we get there. There's Malk. Hey, Malk, how are things down in St. Vincent? Hope things are going well for you. Nice to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being here. Nice to see some folks checking in. We got a lot going on here as well. Hopefully you guys will do well with these questions today. We'll have to see. Some of these are good. The two monitors that are to the right, the ones in front of me and the one just to the right, are my daily driver. Those are the two that I normally use with my Mac Studio. In fact, I've been sort of thinking about adding the third over here, just have a third monitor to do things on. I just haven't thought it through in my head yet on how I want to connect it all up. It'll probably be, because it would need to be, actually, I think I do have an HDMI out on that one. And I don't think I'm using the HDMI out right now. I might be. Well, let's find out, shall we? Let's go to About This Mac. Let's look at more info on this one and see what I do have plugged in to. Do I have this display connection? Does it show me, or do I have to walk around there? I have the studio display in front of me. That one is definitely a Thunderbolt. This is a LG display that is also a Thunderbolt. So I am using two Thunderbolts here. I could set that one up for HDMI if I wanted to. I don't know. Then I have to work on the whole process. Oh, we're coming off the top of the hour. I should probably stop talking and I should start thinking about what I'm doing. Why start now? We're going to get things going, though. We got a lot going on. And we can talk all about what's coming up. Here we are at the top of the hour. We've got this ready to go. We've got these ready to go. I think at this point we can pull up, pardon me, my keynote. We can continue through that. I don't need the update. We're looking for a green light. We got it. We go. How about a live stream, everybody? What do you think? I think so too. Let's do one. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2025 Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1A+ study group. Thanks for joining us. We are all set for an hour of Q&A where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And if you are here live, you can interactively vote on what you think the right answers might be. If you're watching this on a replay, you can still follow along with us as well. And you'll be able to pick out which questions and answers you think go together and which ones make the most sense. To be able to participate on this live event, we would love it if you could join us on this one. I need to get the screen up that gives you the directions. There it is. You can go to this link at professormesser.com/QA to be able to answer the questions that we have for you today. And in fact, I have a question for you that comes from our study group. I think it was the one last month. So this is a good test to see if you are able to use this link. This question is one that asks, here it is, a device has just received a DHCP request or DHCP address with a 24-hour lease. When will this device contact the DHCP server again to renew the lease? Now, I've got a number of answers here. You can see the link that's there at professormesser.com/QA. And always, of course, please keep in mind that our questions and our answers should be taken online at the link that you see on your screen. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Let's go through that question again. It asks, a device has just received, I guess it would be good if I was in there as well. Let's see if we can make that happen. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can today. We're going to figure out if I'm able to make that happen. So here it is. We've got a device has just received a DHCP address with a 24-hour lease. When will this device contact the DHCP server again to renew the lease? What a good question. When will that happen? Well, we're going to find out. If you'd like to follow along with what we're doing here, you can use this link. There it is, professormesser.com/QA to lock in your question. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to come back to this question, though, in just a moment. So stick around for that one. In the meantime, thank you for joining us on our study group. We do one of these study groups every month. We have plenty to go through. If you're someone who is working through the details of these exams and trying to get all of the Q&A and the studying and the video watching and the book watching, we have tons of resources available for you. We, of course, have our weekly or daily pop quiz question here available at professormesser.com/X/Instagram/LinkedIn. We've got lots of places you can go. And, of course, we can send these directly to you in your inbox. That's something you can sign up right on the Professor Messer website. Of course, our entire A+ video course is available for you to watch for free online. Nothing is behind a paywall. Everything is there and available for you to watch. And of course, you can find that on our YouTube channel at professormesser.com/YouTube. Sometime during this first hour of the video, I'm going to give you information and instructions on how you could earn a 1-hour continuing education unit email. That's a CEU. Now, if you don't have your certification yet, this won't apply to you. But if you are watching this video for continuing education to get a 1-hour webinar category credit, listen in sometime in this first hour. I will give you that information. I'll also let you know that sometime as we go through this first hour, we've got so much to go through now with these videos. For example, we have our 220-1101 and 220-1102 exams. Those two exams are the ones that were released on April the 20th of 2022, and they will be retired on September 25th of this year. So if you are studying for your 220-1101 and your 220-1102, keep studying for those. You've got plenty of time, almost 6 months available to study everything you need to study and pass those two exams. And these are the two exams where the most amount of study materials are available. This is the version of the exam, I should say, that gives you the best possible chance for passing these two exams. So these are the ones that we will be talking about today. And maybe in the after show, we'll go through some details about what might have changed between this version of the exam and a set of exam versions that was recently updated. We'll talk more about that in a moment. The exam itself, each one of these exams, the 1101 and the 1102, are 90 minutes each. For the 1101, you need to score 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. And on the 1102, you need to score a 700 on a scale from 100 to 900. The exams themselves are mostly multiple choice, but you may be also asked other types of questions. These are other questions that CompTIA refers to as performance-based questions, and we will be going through one performance-based question today in this live stream. As many of you know, about a week ago, we had a new set of exams that was introduced. This was released on March the 25th. This is the 1201 and the 1202. So this is the latest version of the exam. So we're in this interesting place right now where both the 1100 series and the 1200 series exams are both available for you to take all at the same time. Now you have to pick which series you're going to go with. You can't mix and match these. So you can't take an 1101 and a 1202. You can't take a 1201 and an 1102. They have to be from the same series. That's the important part, and that's something you should keep in mind if you're watching this and it's getting close to September of 2025, which is when the 1100 series retires. Because this was introduced in March of 2025, we expect that this exam will be around until September of 2028. Not much we have to worry about regarding any scheduling there. Most of these exams are usually around about 3.5 years. That puts it exactly at that time frame. As we get closer to September of 2028, we'll make sure we update that to a more accurate and more specific date once CompTIA provides us with that information. Check in again in about 3 years. I might have more information for you. Exactly the same requirements for this version of the exam as the last. Really not much change there. Still 90 minutes per exam. You still need to make a 675 on the core 1. You still need to make a 700 on the core 2. And regardless of which pair of these exams you take and pass, the moment you pass that second exam, your certification is good for 3 years. So the expiration dates, the retirement dates that they have available on the website for these different exam versions doesn't matter if you're already certified. They could change the exam dates every day. If you already have your A+ certification, doesn't really matter what they do. You are still good for 3 years when that happens. So a lot to work with there. A lot of information to go through. For those that need a little bit more detail, we are in this overlap period right at the beginning of this overlap period where both the 1100 series and the 1200 series exams are available at the same time. So this is a pretty good place to be, where you can now make the decision yourself as to which set of exams you would like to take. And this can be a very easy process to transition either through the completion of your 1100 series or transition into a completely new series with the 1200 series. Either way, we've got study materials for you on our website, on our YouTube channel. There's plenty of things that we'll be doing for both of these exam versions. Do not worry about that. Also let you know that eventually we will have some podcast audio of this live event ready to go. I guess I should put information on my screen to have this available to you. This is the podcast version you can find at professormesser.com/podcast. It is supposed to be this great, if you're working through this, a great place to go to add this to your favorite podcast listening program. But if you don't have a podcast listening program, you can always listen in by going to professormesser.com/podcast or go to your favorite streaming service like Spotify. You can always put it on that link as well. Lots of things that you could do to make these happen. This is something that might help you as you're stepping through and trying to figure out what the best choice is going to be for making decisions about your study materials. So hopefully that can help you as you're going through this. About a day after we finish this live stream, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will be updated. That's because my marketing manager, Lori, is going through this. Hi, Lori. She's listening to this replay. She's watching the chat as it goes by, and she's putting in these timestamps that allows you to find exactly what you are looking for. This is something we add about a day afterwards, and because we are doing it ourselves, we know it is a very accurate representation of this live stream. Just another thing to help you find exactly what you might be looking for. And of course, when we're done here, you can find us over on our Discord server. That's at professormesser.com/Discord. There are thousands of people on our Discord server studying for their A+, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certifications. So if you have a question or you'd like other people to help you study with, that's a great place to go for those. Eventually, you will need to take your exam, and we have discounted vouchers available on our website. You can find those at professormesser.com/vouchers. If you're in the U.S., Canada, these vouchers are for you. If you're outside of the U.S. and outside of Canada or U.S. territory, unfortunately, we don't have any discounted vouchers for you at the moment, but keep checking back. Maybe we'll get that set up in the very near future. I also include an extra bonus. If you purchase the voucher on my site, you get a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. This is an ebook with a set of tips and tricks that can help you with studying, and tips and tricks and strategies you can use during the exam itself to help you do just a little bit better with that final score. Something that might help you, and that's included for free. This is something you cannot purchase on our site. It is only available if you purchase a voucher or you purchase one of our success bundles. Let's talk more about that question that we asked earlier. It's this one that asks, a device has just received a DHCP address with a 24-hour lease. When will this device contact the DHCP server again to renew the lease? That's a fine question. When will it do that again? We have a couple of options on our list. Those options are every hour, 12 hours after lease, at the end of the 24-hour lease, not until the device is restarted, or after 4 hours, and then every hour afterwards. Well, we got a few options available there. Let's see what you chose for this one. I'm going to stop this particular poll, and we can see that 61% of you say the answer is 12 hours after lease. We have 30% that said at the end of the 24-hour lease. And we've got other options like not until the device is restarted at 5%, after 4 hours, then each hour afterward at 3%, and 2% of you said every hour. So by far, the majority here said 61% said 12 hours after lease. Well, this would make a lot of sense, because if you are someone who's working through the leases of all of these things, then you're probably struggling the same way I am to make sure that all of these are available. This is something that is called a T1 timer. When you receive a DHCP request, and you get an IP address on your computer, you check in to renew that lease, not at the end of the lease, like you might with getting an apartment. Instead, you have to wait until halfway through the lease to check back in. It's something we don't commonly do with our apartments. If you have a one-year lease, you don't usually check in at the 6-month part and say, we're still good with our lease, right? That's not what we do. Wait until the end. But with DHCP, very different. We check in halfway through, 50% of the lease time by default. There are ways to, of course, change those defaults, but not many people do. You commonly leave it at the default 50%. If that is not available, for some reason your DHCP server is down, it checks again in 7/8 of the lease time, or 87.5% of the lease time. It checks in again to maybe rebind with any available DHCP server that might be on your network. So a couple of different options if you're going through a DHCP lease process. That is the answer we were looking for. 61% of you said 12 hours after lease. If it's a 24-hour lease, half that time is indeed 12 hours, which means you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Well, that hopefully gives you at least an idea of how to get online, how to answer the questions on our online answer form. It gives you a way to help work through some of the challenges and understand what buttons you need to push to be able to interactively add your vote to the answer that we have here. Well, now I have a different set of questions for you. This next set of questions is going to provide you with a number of different options. This is a performance-based question. Now, as many of you know, most of the exam is consists of multiple choice questions. The question we just did, for example, was a multiple choice question where there was 5 different options. You could choose one of those 5 options, which means if you didn't really know the answer, you had about a 20% chance of getting that correct. CompTIA also wants to really test you, though. They don't want to have you stumble into the right answer or guess at what the right answer might be. So at the very beginning of your exam, you will get a handful of questions that are not multiple choice. And they are anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. They might be a drag and drop question. You might have to pull down menus and select different options. They might put you at a command prompt. There's a lot of different ways to ask the information that's contained on your exam objectives. CompTIA wants to give you some challenging problems that make you think and really test to see if you know the information and that you're not just guessing at what the right answer might be. So I have for you today a new performance-based question. Let's see how you do with this one. This is a performance. I guess I need to get me off the screen here. That might help you a little bit as I am stumbling through getting the details of this broken off of this second screen. This is a question where I have a set of symptoms, and then I want you to tell me what the answers might be for this one, or what the most likely cause might be for this one. This should be a really good question. And now my video controller has completely stopped working, which is really not what you're shooting for when you're dealing with video controllers. Oh, that's because the entire app has gone missing. And that will do it every time, by the way, if you're someone working through all of this. Let me get me out of the way so that you can actually see the question. Match the symptom to the most likely cause. During startup, a screen is blank and the system beeps 3 times. The next symptom is a desktop computer exhibits a grinding noise when loading or saving a file. The next one is voice over IP calls and video conference audio drops out and the video is choppy. And the last symptom I have is the BIOS date and time is incorrect. Now I have for you at the bottom of the screen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different possible causes. And what I want you to tell me is what you think the most likely cause is for all of these. So this is where you want to use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. And for these 4 symptoms is the problem: A, damaged Ethernet cable, faulty DIMMs, motherboard battery depleted, a monitor backlight failure, a hard drive failure, internet modem is powered off, an incorrect wireless channel, or a power supply failure. So I've got all of these. Now, these may not be the exact problem, but the question says, what is the most likely cause for these? Now, for those of you listening again, here are the symptoms. During startup, the screen is blank and the system beeps 3 times. The next one is a desktop computer exhibits a grinding noise when loading or saving a file. The next one is voice over IP calls and video conference audio drops out and the video is choppy. And the last one is BIOS date and time is incorrect. So I want you to match these up. It's a 1-to-1 match, which means there'll be 4 of these left over at the end. Is the issue a damaged Ethernet cable, faulty DIMMs, motherboard battery depleted, monitor backlight failure, hard drive failure, internet modem powered off, incorrect wireless channel, or a power supply failure? If you think you know the answer, there's your link. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. This is a very common type of question that you could get on a performance-based question. But notice, even though this is multiple different problems and multiple different symptoms and different causes that are on the screen, all of this information comes directly from the exam objectives. There are people that come to my website all the time and they ask me about what they should prepare for a performance-based question. Well, the performance-based questions are asking you the same information you need to know as the multiple choice-based questions. They're not going off script. They're not finding interesting things that you've never heard of before. These are things that you're supposed to know because they are in the exam objectives. You will hear this as a common theme as I go through this conversation today. The exam objectives, the exam objectives, the exam objectives. It is something that we really do focus on and make sure that you're familiar with these exam objectives, because these will help you as you get into knowing more about what options might be available. So what I'm looking for here is you just tell me if you think the first four of these four symptoms are the first four causes, then you can simply type in A, B, C, D and submit that. Just keep in mind and remember which options you chose, because that will be important as you go into this. I want you to match the symptom to the most likely cause. See if you know what this one happens to be. This might be a good one to go through. If you're someone who's working on your exam, this might be something to consider, to think about. Well, I guess if I put the right thing up on the screen, there we go. You can actually see that is indeed what we're talking about. Match that symptom to the most likely cause. You can find that at professormesser.com/QA and submit that on your screen. A lot of people have submitted your answer. So let's step through each one of these and see what I think the most likely cause is for these symptoms, and see if it matches what you think the answer might be. Let's start with the very first one, which is during startup, the screen is blank and the system beeps 3 times. Of these 8 different issues, these 8 different likely causes, which one would that be? I think it's answer B, faulty DIMMs. This obviously is referring to faulty DIMMs would be memory modules, the dual inline memory modules that are on the motherboard of the system. When you first start your computer up, it obviously goes through POST, the power on self-test. POST is going to check for a number of important hardware systems and make sure that they're available. It wants to know that a keyboard is connected, because you can't use your computer without a keyboard. It checks if the CPU is operating. The system is obviously not going to work properly if you don't have a CPU. It checks that the memory that's in the system is working as it should be, does a very basic update and make sure that very basic diagnostic and make sure that those are working. Those would be the DIMMs. It might also check and make sure that the video subsystem is working, because you need to see what's on the screen. If any of those major subsystems are not working as expected, the system is not going to be able to operate. And normally, if it is something relating to video, CPU, or memory, it can't even show you any information on the screen, because the components that are providing that information on the screen aren't working. If your memory isn't working, your computer doesn't work. If your CPU isn't working, your computer's not going to work. You can't see what's on the screen. If your video subsystem is broken, you're obviously not going to see what's on the screen. So on this particular question, the screen is blank and the system is beeping. It's probably memory, it's probably CPU, or it's probably the video subsystem. And in this case, the only one of these that matches that one is indeed option B, faulty DIMMs. There's your faulty memory modules. That is our most likely cause given these 8 different causes listed. Let's go to the next one on our list. A desktop computer exhibits a grinding noise when loading or saving a file. You never want a grinding noise, by the way. That is a noise you do not want to hear on your computer, which means that you probably have a hard drive failure. This is for someone who still has a hard drive. You got a number of challenges there. If you've still got a hard drive, maybe it's time to upgrade to an SSD. Maybe it's what it's really trying to tell you. But maybe there are some cases, especially when working on a system, where you need to have a hard drive. There's more capacity. You can have multiple hard drives at a relatively inexpensive cost. So make sure you are familiar with those different options for what grinding noises might be. It could have been a fan. There could be a fan that is got something in the fan itself, or maybe the bearings of the fan are going bad. Those can cause grinding noises as well. This one, obviously, when saying it is happening when loading or saving a file, tends to point to something that is related to the storage subsystem. And as you can tell from the 8 different options that are here, it's the only one that really matches. We don't have anything in here about fans, for example. Let's go to the next one on our list. Voice over IP calls and video conference audio drops out and the video is choppy. Well, this could be a number of different options. The one that I think fits best of all 8 of these options would be answer A, a damaged Ethernet cable. Voice over IP relies on a good network connection and one that it provides data consistently to be able to get the best possible quality of audio and the best quality of video if you're doing any video type conferencing. If there's any problem with that network communication, it's going to sound like you're underwater. Things will drop out. Your video will be choppy. You won't be able to see what's going on. It might go to a lower resolution to try to at least give you some of the video that's there. That is certainly a challenge, and I think answer A fits that one quite nicely. Last on our list is our BIOS date and time is incorrect. That, of course, is referring to the system BIOS, the basic input-output system. That is the basic firmware that gets your system up and running. It is also responsible for maintaining the date and the time on your system, the same date and time that is used by your operating system. If the date and time is incorrect, I guess someone could have gone into your computer and manually changed it, but that wasn't one of our options. The other component that is important on your motherboard for maintaining that date and time, especially when you are disconnected from a primary power source, would be answer C. The battery that is on the motherboard has been depleted. It is that very small battery that is responsible for maintaining the date and the time when you power off your computer and unplug it from a power source. That's why you can move your computer to another place, plug it in, and it knows what the date and time is, even though you didn't manually set it. That's because that battery has kept that date and the time going from the last place that you had it connected to a power source. Those are the 4 different symptoms and the 4 different causes associated with that. During startup, a screen is blank and the system beeps 3 times is due to faulty DIMMs. A desktop computer exhibiting a grinding noise when loading or saving a file certainly points to a hard drive failure. Voice over IP calls and video conference audio drops out and the video is choppy. That certainly is a damaged Ethernet cable. And lastly, the BIOS date and time being incorrect certainly points to the motherboard battery being depleted. Now, this means that things like the monitor backlight failure is not one of those issues. The internet modem was not powered off. Wasn't the issue. We have incorrect wireless channel, and then we have a power supply failure. So those are things that did not fit into this scenario. They would have not caused the problems that we see here on the screen. Hopefully you are familiar with some of these symptoms. Fortunately, the exam objectives themselves have a nice set of symptoms and problems you need to know about, and you need to understand what you need to do to solve those problems. They're all listed in the exam objectives. That was our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you did pretty well on that. Some folks in the chat room said they did pretty well on that one. Make sure you are familiar with those symptoms. Make sure you're familiar with how to resolve those symptoms, and you'll do very well on the troubleshooting part of this Core 1 exam. Troubleshooting is also important for Core 2 as well, so just keep that in mind as you're studying for both of your A+ certification exams. Let's do another question, but now let's go back to our multiple choice questions. This one asks, a user has disabled AMDV in their BIOS. Which of the following would be affected by this change? Would it be, let's have this flip over to the answers on my side. Would it be network communication to another VLAN, full disk encryption, hardware-based virtualization, multiple core processing, or VPN client connectivity? Those are the 5 different options. And if you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. If I can show it to you on the screen, that is. Let's give you the right thing on your screen. There it is. Now we've got the right thing so you can actually see what's going on here. We've got a lot of different options to look at. Let's see if I can get me on the screen here. I cannot. I'm trying to push a lot of buttons to get me there. There we go. This was what we were working through here. Hopefully you are familiar with these options. Certainly knowing the BIOS and knowing the settings in the BIOS is going to be very important for your exam. Make sure you are familiar with those. All of these settings here might have some link back to the BIOS. This is not a gimme from that perspective, you do have to know what those differences are in the BIOS and what you would do to resolve those specific issues. So hopefully you're familiar with those. This also, by the way, knowing these options, I'm getting these directly from the exam objectives. So as you're going through the questions and you're going through the answers, if any of these things don't seem to sound right to you, or you don't see there's a word maybe you aren't quite sure of, make a note of it and go back to the objectives. It might help you quite a bit as you're going through this. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a user has disabled AMDV in their BIOS. Which of the following would be affected by this change? Network communication to another VLAN, full disk encryption, hardware-based virtualization, multiple core processing, or VPN client connectivity. Which one is it? Let's see what you think the answer is. We'll stop our poll, and we can see that 84% of you say the answer is hardware-based virtualization. 10% of you say the answer is multiple core processing. Then we go to single digits. 4% say network communication to another VLAN, and then a tie for last place between 1% with full disk encryption and 1% with VPN client connectivity. This is an important consideration when you are preparing for your exam. There is processor support that you need to think about. If you're running an Intel processor, if you're doing any type of virtualization, Intel refers to this as virtualization technology, or VT. It's in the BIOS configuration of your system. It's built into the CPU. This is hardware-based virtualization. If you're running an AMD processor, AMD simply calls it AMDV for the AMD virtualization function. Both of those are effectively the same thing, just on different types of processors. And this is something that's important to consider as you're working through the configurations for virtualization. So make sure you're familiar with those. This obviously comes from the 220.11.01 video 4.2 client-side virtualization. And indeed, client-side virtualization is what got us here on this question. If we have disabled AMDV, that means we have an AMD processor and we have just disabled the ability for it to perform hardware-based virtualization in the CPU itself. And that's why 84% of you said hardware-based virtualization is what has now been affected by that single change to your BIOS. So by making one single change to your basic input-output system configuration, you could potentially turn off all of the virtualization features that you might have been using on that system. Probably not what you were shooting for. This doesn't hurt to be turned on, even if you're not doing any type of virtualization. So there would have to be a really good reason to turn this off. In this particular case, the reason we're turning it off so that we could have a pop quiz question. I guess that's where this particular one comes from. But sometimes if you go into your BIOS, it's very easy sometimes to accidentally turn things on and off. Or if you're someone like me who just likes to try different things, you might have turned it on or turned it off without actually knowing what it does. I'm guilty of that as well. So this is why you need to be aware when you make a change to the BIOS, make sure you know what that change is doing. Make sure that you have backups. Make sure you've taken pictures of the screen so that if something doesn't work when you turn your computer back on, even if you don't recognize it not working immediately, you can go back to that previous configuration and work through those details. Let's now shift gears to a different question that we have. This next question on our list says, when a user logs into their Windows laptop, they no longer see their H:, K:, or M: drives. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it an error in the login script? Drives are disabled in the system BIOS. A drive cable is disconnected. Password for full disk encryption is incorrect. Or the system is low on RAM. It's another one of those where we have a problem. What's causing this problem? It's almost the same as our performance-based question we did earlier, but with different items. When a user logs into their Windows laptop, they no longer see their H:, K:, or M: drives. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? An error in the login script, drives are disabled in the system BIOS, drive cable is disconnected, password for full disk encryption is incorrect, or system is low on RAM. If you think you know the answer, submit your answer with the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit that answer. Hopefully, this is something you're familiar with. I'm now punching a bunch of keys on my side, trying to get a couple of pictures working the way I want them to work, which they are not. Just another thing for me to work on once the live stream is over. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, when a user logs into their Windows laptop, they no longer see their H:, K:, or M: drives. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? Is it an error in the login script? Drives are disabled in the system BIOS? Drive cable is disconnected? Password for full disk encryption is incorrect? Or system is low on RAM? What do you think it is? Well, we're a little torn. We did not get a majority on this one. 48% of you say the drives are disabled in the system BIOS. 27% say a drive cable is disconnected. We have 15% that say it's an error in the login script. And then we're single digits. 7% say a password for full disk encryption is incorrect. And 4% say the system is low on RAM. The real key to this question is the question itself. Which of the following is the most likely reason for this issue? So that is an important consideration, the most likely reason. So one of the things that you can really focus on when you're working through the details of this is going to be hard to see because my head's in the way on the screen. There's a lot of things that can cause a drive to go missing inside of your operating system. Maybe there are drives in your system that are supposed to show up and they don't show up. These are physical drives on your system. One way to check the physical drives connected to your computer is to see their status in the BIOS. So you would restart your computer, start your BIOS config, and have a look at what's in there. But in our question, we have an H drive, a K drive, and an M drive. Now, for those of you familiar with the way that drive letters are assigned within Windows, the first drive that you put into your system, the first hard drive, SSD, or primary storage device in your system, is commonly provided a C drive. C: is the drive letter associated with that. That's because traditionally, we go back in the days prior to our modern computers, we had floppy drives on drive A and drive B. So we don't generally use floppy drives anymore. So we just don't have a drive A and a drive B anymore. We simply start our drives with drive C, which means if we add another drive or a separate partition to our computer, it would be drive D. The next drive would be drive E. The drive after that would be F and G. You start to see where this is going. So for us to just get to drive M, you would have to have a lot of separate partitions with separate drive letters in your computer, or that many separate storage drives. You need C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, 11 drives in your computer. That would not be a common configuration. You probably don't have 11 drives in your computer. So the 48% of you that say the drives are disabled in the system BIOS, it's unlikely someone has 11 physical drives on their Windows laptop. Most laptops, there's no laptop out there. I'm not going to say most. There's not a laptop out there where I can fit 11 drives onto that system. So it's being that our drives are disabled in the system BIOS, not the issue that we're having in this particular case. So we have other options, though. Let's check what the other possible things might be. It might be a bad drive or a disconnected cable. But again, we're on a laptop. We don't have room for 11 drives. So although this could be part of the problem, we know bad drive, disconnected cable, in this case, not the issue that is the most likely reason. Could be an external drive. Maybe we bumped the cable with our arm and now it's disconnected. But again, do we have 11 drives or at least 10 other drives connected externally to our laptop? Also, probably not the case. And the one you probably can't see because my head's in the way, it says network shares. Share drives can be connected during startup. That's interesting. Here's a better view of it. So there is an option to reconnect it, sign in, or how most places will do this, they will connect it with a login script. That is the way that they connect these systems together. When you log into your system, a script runs that will connect you to network drives that are located elsewhere. There's a separate network server somewhere, probably multiple network servers, and you're connecting to a Windows share. And that is indeed how most of your Windows shares, once you connect them, they are assigned a drive letter. So if you connect to server 1 common, the server 1 server on the common share, you might assign it drive H. That way, when you're working with your applications, you simply refer to drive H and it connects directly to that share. Same thing with the K drive, same thing with the M drive. You can also add other drive letters in here. And it's very common if you're in a very large environment where everyone gets the same H drive. It's very common for someone to open up a ticket that says, my H drive is missing. Well, they don't know what the H drive is. They have no idea what server the H drive is even connecting to, nor should they worry about it. That's your responsibility. That's why you have a job. So whenever you run into that scenario, your problem is most likely something related to an error in the login script. And if we're looking at this problem where a user logs into a laptop and there's an H drive, a K drive, an M drive, and other drives they can't see, it's not that they're disabled in the BIOS. It's not that the drive cable is disconnected. It's not that the password for full disk encryption is incorrect. Your system wouldn't even start if that was the case. And it wouldn't be that the system is low on RAM. There's certainly errors that you will get if you are low on memory, but having drives going missing is probably not one of the most common symptoms associated with low memory. In this case, the one that clearly stands out, the one that is the really only option between all of these, is an error in the login script. Only 15% of you chose that option, but in this particular case, that is exactly the most likely reason given the 5 options that are available here. It is an error in the login script. Hopefully, that gives you some ideas about troubleshooting and things you need to look out for as you are working through these different exam options. There's a lot to deal with on the exam. We've already gone through a number of different troubleshooting options. We've looked at some networking capabilities. We've just talked about Windows laptops and login scripts, and a lot of other things associated with that. Of course, there is a lot in this particular exam. 137 videos in both of my training courses. There is a lot in that list. Hopefully, you're able to go through all 137 videos. It's 19 hours of content, though, and some of you may not have time to go through every single video. Because of that, I've created my own set of notes that is a copy of all of the important things that are in these particular videos. These are what the PDF version of these course notes looks like. There is an index, a table of contents at the beginning, rather, and we go through video starting at section 1.1 with laptop hardware. We go through the different sections. All of the important text is in here, all of the important graphics, the important charts, everything that you need to know for your studies are in this set of course notes. Not only do we have this set of course notes that is this digital version that you see in front of you, I also have a physical version of the course notes. Here they are. It's exactly the same course notes, the same information with the same important text and content with our graphics and charts that are in here, but it's just something that is printed that I can ship over to you. These are pretty useful to be able to have available. They give you kind of a one-stop shop to summarize everything listed in every single video. If you get the physical version of our course notes that you see here, then you get the digital version for free. Just comes with it. So you can download the digital edition immediately while you're waiting on the physical edition to be delivered in the mail. Those are my course notes. This might give you something that you can work on to help with your studies. Hopefully this is something that might help you. Go to professormesser.com/1101notes, and you can find out more about my Core 1 course notes, my Core 2 course notes, and of course, we have them available not only for the 1100 series exams, but you can see, kind of hard to see on the screen now, the 1200 series course notes are also available. So regardless which exam version you are taking, we have study materials to help you either way. Something that might help you as you're going through and trying to learn everything you need to know before you walk into that exam room. That's all available on our website, professormesser.com/1101 notes. Let's do another question, shall we? We'll shift our gears back to this next question that asks, a technician has been dispatched to configure a replacement internet firewall. Which of the following configuration connections should the technician plan for? Would it be serial, 802.11, F connector, Bluetooth, or SC? There's a lot happening there in this question. There's a lot going on here. As always, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. The question again asks, a technician has been dispatched to configure a replacement internet firewall. Which of the following configuration connections should the technician plan for? Would it be serial, 802.11, F connector, Bluetooth, or SC? You think you know the answer? Follow that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Maybe this is one we can bounce back on. This might be one that many of you have even done before. Maybe you have a firewall, you've installed it, and during the installation, you had a configuration connection. What was that? Think back and see if you know what's on that list. We'll have to figure out. All of these are connections. All of these are interface types. So make sure you recognize all of these. If you don't recognize one, make a note. You can go back to your exam objectives and you will find it is listed in those exam objectives. Make sure you're familiar with all of those. Those connections should be something important to consider if you're someone who is working through these different exam options. A lot of people locking in their answers very quickly on this one. I never know if that's a good sign or if that's a bad sign. We're going to find out, though, in a moment. The question again asks, a technician has been dispatched to configure a replacement internet firewall. Which of the following configuration connections should the technician plan for? Should they plan for serial, 802.11, F connector, Bluetooth, or SC? Well, what did you answer? Let's find out. We'll close our poll and didn't quite get a 50% or more on this one, but that's okay. 46% is still pretty good. 46% of you say 802.11. 33% of you say serial. And then we have 14% that say F connector. The last two are single digits. 6% of you say SC, and then 1% say Bluetooth. So we've got a lot to deal with here. The question, of course, is asking us about configuration of a firewall. Specifically, you're showing up, or the technician is showing up. They've got their firewall. They install it into the rack, but now they have to configure it. They have to give it an IP address. They have to at least at the minimum give it an IP address. Even if you're copying over a previous config, you have to be able to access that device. And one of the ways that you can access that device, it doesn't even have an IP address yet. How are we supposed to configure it if it doesn't have an IP address that allows us to configure it? That's sort of a catch-22. We have to figure out what the option might be. To be able to do that, there is a special interface on your firewall. If you look on your switches, if you look on your routers, there's a lot of different interfaces available. There's one special interface that is specifically designed for this exact scenario where you need to provide configuration of this device without having any actual IP access to this device. And the way that you would do that is through the serial interface. There's a lot of different types of serial interfaces. One type of serial interface is a DB9 interface. You might see this also referenced as its proper name, which is actually DE9 for this interface type. This is one that sends serial signals. If you see anything sending serial with a DB9, it's probably sending RS-232 type signals over that particular link. This is a very common standard. If you look at some of your older equipment, it's probably going to have that in that list. Another thing that is important to know for this connection is that there's probably one of these on your switch, on your router, on your firewall, but it may not be a DB9 connector. It may be a serial connector using USB. It might be a serial connection that is using some other, maybe it's an RJ45 connection that is serial. There's a lot of different ways to do a serial connection into these devices, but it's usually got a tag on it or a label on the device that says console, or it says configuration, or it says serial. Maybe it just says that. But it tells you on that device that's your console connection, that's your management port, has something along those lines so that you can really focus on what that particular issue might be. And that is one that serial connection, 33% of you got that one absolutely right. So a third of you got this one correct. Now, 46% of you said 802.11. Well, in this case, we're installing a firewall, but there's no way to connect to the firewall if you don't have an IP address. And if you don't have an IP address, you can't use Ethernet. And if you can't use Ethernet, you probably also can't use a wireless connection either. And obviously, 802.11 is the IEEE standard for our wireless network communication. So in this particular case, installing a firewall has nothing to do with wireless connectivity. 802.11 is not going to be the answer we were looking for. So unfortunately, not the correct one. 14% of you said the answer is an F connector. The F, of course, stands for F. We actually did some research on this. It is a standard that was created, or the name of this particular connector happened to be the sixth one in line that they tried. They had an A connector, they had a B connector, they had a C connector, a D, an E connector. Finally, the F connector is the one that stuck. There's actually connectors after this as well, G, H, I. In this particular case, this connector, the F connector, is the threaded coax connector that you commonly see associated with cable modems or your cable television. Well, in this case, we're replacing an internet firewall. There may not be any coax anywhere in this building. This may all be coming in line through an Ethernet connection, RJ45. So F connector is probably not going to be a connection on your internet firewall. So although that is a valid connector and a connector type that you'll commonly see on a cable modem, is not a connection type that you might find on your internet firewall. So unfortunately, the 14% of you didn't get that one correct either. We also have 6% that say SC, literally the square connector. There's other connector names associated with this, but that is one that most people refer to this. It's a fiber optic connector. There's about three different fiber optic connectors we need to know for our A+ exam. That's one of them. But if we are configuring a firewall, we're probably not configuring it over a fiber connection. First, we don't have a fiber connection on our laptop to be able to configure it with. And secondly, our internet firewalls commonly don't come with fiber already ready to go on the front of them. Certainly not for a console or management connection. Most always, these are the most common connector type you would find, which would be a serial connection using copper. And then lastly, another wireless connection. Only 1% of you said Bluetooth. Bluetooth, certainly something that could be used for communication to a device, but rarely used on an internet firewall, and certainly would not be used to configure the internet firewall as the most common option. So if you're planning to connect and configure a firewall, a switch, a router, or something like that, then you would absolutely want to use something that is a serial connection, either USB, RJ45 serial, a DB9 serial. There's a lot of different serial type connections that you would find. In this particular case, that is the answer we were looking for if you're planning to configure a device. Serial connectivity is what you can use to configure that with. If you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit and you would like to receive an email certifying that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU, I would like you to follow these instructions to be able to receive that email. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com. At the top or the bottom, there is a Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, you should go to click that, and it'll bring up a screen and put in your name, put in your email address. In the subject line, please put April 2025 Core 1, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, serial 802.11 F connector. Those are the 3 words, the 3 super secret code words of the month. Then you can put anything else you'd like in that message if you want to. I read through every single one of these. It's nice to get your comments, and then you can submit that. Usually takes me about a week to turn these around, and you'll receive an email from me that has been digitally signed, which certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. Those instructions, again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. Click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put April 2025 Core 1. In the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, serial 802.11 F connector. And then you can submit that, and then hopefully a week or so, you maybe sooner, maybe a little bit later, you will receive an email from me that has the details of that particular CEU. You'll get an email. It's an email that says, this certifies that you are here, and attached to that email is a digital signature so that you know that nothing in that message has been changed since I sent it to you. So if you're somebody that uses PGP or GPG or something compatible with those, you can verify that digital signature. And if you're studying for Security Plus, you may want to do that anyway, just for fun. Why not? Something to play around with. Let's now move to our, how are you on time? We're pretty good on time. Let's squeeze in a couple more questions, shall we? Next on our list is this question that asks, a help desk team is no longer able to remotely control any Windows devices on the corporate network. Which of the following is most likely blocked on the core firewall? Is this TCP 389, TCP 143, TCP 3389, UDP 161, or TCP 22? Do you think you know the answer? Follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Question again asks, a help desk team is no longer able to remotely control any Windows devices on the corporate network. Which of the following is most likely blocked on the core firewall? Is it TCP 389, TCP 143, TCP 3389, UDP 161, or TCP 22? This is one where you can submit your answer at any time by following the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. This might be something that you're familiar with. If you're on a help desk, this may be something, this would be very challenging if you were actually on the help desk and not able to do any help. You're not able to remote control anything. I guess you can help over the phone. We go back to, do you see the cursor on your screen? Click the up arrow. It's a nightmare to step through without the remote control capabilities. Hopefully this is not something that's happened to you. A lot of people locking in their answers very quickly on this one, though. I feel like we might be very familiar with what this one might be. We might have run across this one before. Anytime you get a port number question, we need to know port numbers. Each one of these port numbers, by the way, you need to know for your exam. So while you're waiting for us to finish this one, you should go through each of these separate port numbers you see on the screen, and you should know what those are used for and how you would use them. This might be something important to consider. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a help desk team is no longer able to remotely control any Windows devices on the corporate network. Which of the following is most likely blocked on the core firewall? Is it TCP 389, TCP 143, TCP 3389, UDP 161, or TCP 22? We're going to stop our poll and see how we did with this one. 70% say the answer is 3389. 14% say the answer is TCP 22. And then single digits, 9% for TCP 143, 5% for TCP 389, and then 2% for UDP 161. What's interesting is knowing these port numbers is such an important part, but more than that, we need to know what these port numbers do for us. And that's really what this question is about, is not only knowing what the protocol might be and what the port number is, but you also have to be able to know these actual numbers to be able to do this. So hopefully you're familiar with 3389 being used for RDP, or Remote Desktop Protocol. That is the one we were looking for and being able to use this. So hopefully you're familiar with Remote Desktop. You're familiar with using these Remote Desktop capabilities. So if you are, then you're probably also going to want to go through and understand what these are going to do for you. These are the things that are the most important part of the port number process, is not just knowing RDP is 3389. You really need to know, well, what does that do for you? What's RDP? How does that provide us with any value on the network? And the same thing applies for each of these. We have TCP 389, which is obviously not remote desktop. It's being used for LDAP. We got 143 for some email functionality, port 161 for network management functionality, and port 22 for remote control or remote access at a console functionality. Notice I didn't tell you what the protocols were for those, because I wanted to get across to you that there are obviously protocols we need to know for these, but it's perhaps even more important that we know what these are used for. So once you start to fit all of those things together, you will start to really understand the importance of knowing these port numbers and how they are used on the network. Make sure that you become familiar with every port number. They are all listed in the exam objectives. I had someone come to our chat the other day, and they listed out for us a list of, I think, 100 port numbers that they were studying. And we all were asking, why did you study 100 port numbers? Well, their instructor or someone gave them this list of port numbers, but you don't need to know 100 port numbers, thankfully. You do need to know the ones that are listed in the exam objectives. There's about 20, 21, 22 in there. You do need to know what those are. You obviously need to know the port number. It's useful to know the protocol. It's more important to know what they are used for. So make sure you're familiar with that. In this case, the answer that most of you chose, 70% of you said the answer was TCP 3389. That is exactly the protocol that we want to be able to use. That is the remote desktop protocol, and that's the one that's going to help you if you're ever in this scenario and not being able to remote desktop to somebody's machine. That's the port number used for all of that. Well, I know we're at the top of the hour, but I think we can fit in one more question, don't you? This question is not going to come from my something I wrote earlier. This is going to come from my practice exams book. One of the things I found when I was studying for the A+ and writing these courses and getting feedback from you is that a lot of the questions on the internet just aren't very good. Many of them are outdated, which means they're asking questions from topics that are on exams that are no longer offered, but they're still out there on the internet. I found commercial products this way, by the way. Things you buy and you get it and it's already outdated. I don't know why they do that. What you need is a book that focuses on the most current version of the exam objectives that is associated with your exam. And it's a book that has a set of questions that are written in the same style and the same tone as the actual exam objectives. Then because something wasn't out there, I thought, well, I'll write this myself. So I wrote a book that has 3 separate practice exams in it. Each one of these exams is 90 questions in length. Each exam has 5 performance-based questions. So there are 15 performance-based questions in this book. And we've got a lot of multiple choice questions along with them. Let's do a question from the book, shall we? I've got a copy. I've got question A65 is right here. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to, of course, list a printer question. Of course, it's a printer question. This is question A65. This is page 22 of practice exam A. A user is reporting that a shared laser printer in the marketing department is not printing from one particular application. The front panel of the printer shows the printer's online and ready to receive print jobs. Other users in the department are able to successfully print to the printer. Which of the following would be the best next troubleshooting step? Would it be to power cycle the printer, restart the print spooler, perform a test print from the printer console, or verify the network printer name in the application? 5 different options there. Now, one thing I like about this book is you have options. One is maybe you just want the answer A, B, C, and D, and you can keep it going. I have a link in the book for quick answer. That's on page 31. We're on page 22. This is on page 31. It'll just tell you the answers A, B, C, or D, so you know what it is. I also have a separate page called a detailed answer page, and that's on page 102. Now, we're on page 22 right now, so to be able to see that answer, normally you would have to flip. If you were in your book, you'd have to flip to that page and look at the answer on that page. But we have this digital front end. We have this digital PDF. So inside the PDF, I put hot links, and where it says the details, I can simply click the details to get the answer, and it moves me with a click to page 102. Boom, we're there. Shows me the question again, and it tells me that the answer is D. Verify the network printer name in the application, and it explains why that is the right answer. So far, not very different than other things I've seen, other than it being accurate to the latest set of exam objectives. But if you answered something else, which is what I always end up doing, I always pick the wrong answer, but I want to know why the wrong answer was wrong. How am I supposed to work this into my studies? How is this supposed to improve me if it doesn't tell me why I made a mistake? So in my practice exams book, every incorrect answer is documented. If you answered A, power cycle the printer, I explain why that wasn't the right answer. If you answered B, restart the print spooler, I explain why that isn't the right answer. And if you answered C, perform a test print, I explain why that one's not the right answer either. So now we've gotten that feedback loop. We've gone all the way through the question. We answered it. Oh, we got it wrong. But then it told us why we got it wrong. And because each of these answers is from the exam objectives, all four of these topics are now something that you have learned from one single question. Now, if you read the question and it all makes no sense to you, you don't even understand the words that we're using, at the very bottom of this is a QR code that takes you to the video where this question was created. So you can watch the video, get a refresh on the information you need, and then come back to the question to be able to answer it. There's a QR code that takes you there and a link that takes you there. So whether you are in the physical book or whether you're in this digital version, you have a way to easily find that particular video on the website. Takes you right there. And once you are done with this question, we're going to hit the back button. My PDF reader right here at the top has a back button. Your PDF reader might have one as well. If you click back, it takes us back to where we were on page 22, and we can just go to the next question that's on our list. So that is my practice exams book. It's something that might help you with your studies. If you think that can help you, I have my practice exam book available for the 220 1101 and 1102 exams. If you buy them both at the same time, there's actually a little bit of a price break. You might want to consider doing that. They're the perfect thing to have along with your course notes to help you during that last set of studies with your exam. Hopefully this is something that you might find valuable. I think it is written specifically to get you through that last set of your studies and really prepare you before you walk into your exam. You can find out more on our website. Go to professormesser.com/core1pe or simply choose the link from the main menus on that site. This is, as you've noticed, as we've gone through these questions today, every single one of the questions, every single one of the answers all came from the exam objectives. If you've never seen these objectives before, they are valuable. Here's the set of objectives on my screen. The objectives themselves, I think we can get rid of the sidebar that's here. These objectives list out everything you need to know. This is extremely valuable because not a lot of industry exams provide you with this level of detail. What's great about this is you can now use this as a checklist. While you're going through your studies, check off everything you know, circle the things you don't know. You can see I made some notes on mine since it's a PDF. You can either use a stylus or mark it with colors, and then you can use this for your studies. Once you know every bullet that's in these exam objectives, you are ready to take your exam. It's really that simple. And a lot of people look at this big list and think this is overwhelming. Well, don't worry. We can really break this up into much smaller chunks. We can, for example, let's go to the first section. We'll go all the way to the top. Mobile devices. Given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components, a battery, keyboard, random access memory, hard drive, SSD replacement, wireless cards, we have biometric and near field scanner. Well, that's a good set to start with. Let's study just those things. Don't worry about the rest of the exam. Just study that. Start checking off the things that you know. Okay, got that one down. Got it. Got it. If you can explain this to someone else, you can check it off. That's how good that is. And then when you're done, you can go away and come back the next day or start the next section and either break that up into smaller chunks or take the entire section and use that as your checklist. Very valuable, and it's free. It's on the CompTIA website. You can go to your favorite search engine, search for CompTIA Exam Objectives. You can also follow the link here. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. I know it's hard to see with me in the way there, but that is another link that will take you to the CompTIA website where you can download the exam objectives for free. It's a great tool. Make sure you take advantage of that during your studies. We do one of these study groups every month. I have another A+ study group this month. Today is the 8th. On the 10th of April, on Thursday, we're doing this study group again, except with Core 2 questions and answers. All new questions, all new answers, I guess. And then you have now 1101 and 1102 all this week. So if you're studying for your A+ exams, these might be good study groups to sit in on. Next week on Wednesday, on Wednesday, I don't have my April view up here, but Wednesday of next week is one that is our Network Plus study group, and the Wednesday the following week is our Security Plus study group. So we've got study groups throughout the month. You can always come back to look at those. I've even scheduled the Network Plus and Security Plus also for May. Those are listed on here as the 15th and the 21st. So you have a few things that you can work on along those lines. The A+ study groups, though, scheduled for April 10th, May 6th, and May 8th. If this is way past April and May, while you're watching this on a replay, you can always find out when the next live event is going to be by going to professormesser.com/calendar, and you'll find exactly when and where to find us live. If you're on our Discord, there's also an events channel on the Discord, and I update that events channel with exactly this information as well. If any of these dates change, I always update the calendar and the events channel immediately. So those are always, always, always going to be up to date with the latest set of calendar events. You'll always know that it's accurate. You always know that it's been updated. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A, but we've got more to come. In this case, I'm going to open up the questions that you can ask me in the after show. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. And of course, if you buy it on our website, our free copy of the Exam Hacks ebook. That's at professormesser.com/vouchers. We also have our course notes, our practice exams, and so much more on our site, along with our absolutely free video training course at professormesser.com/1101success. And although you can't see it very well on the screen here, you can follow us anywhere on social media. Just type in professormesser.com/YouTube/Discord/X/Twitter/Instagram/LinkedIn. Wherever you go, just type professormesser.com/ the name of the place you would like to find us. And if we are there, you'll be able to access us right there. Hopefully that's given you something that you can consider as we are going through our A+ studies. Thank you so much for being here in this first hour. Stick around for our after show in just a few moments. Don't go anywhere. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, let's now push some more buttons. Let's push these buttons. Let's now get the right thing on the screen. Where did it go? Now, I'm getting there. I promise I am. I've been struggling with my video switcher. It seems to crash out on me a little bit today, but that's okay. We're in the after show portion of our display today. Oh, it'd be nice if I had this. We could get rid of that. We could turn off some of these things. There we go, everybody. It's time for our after show. Thanks for hanging in there. Our after show is the part where I'm no longer asking questions of you. This is your chance to ask questions of me. And it's the same link we were using before. You can go to professormesser.com/QA and you can submit your questions right there on that screen. If you go to that link, you'll notice there is a message on the screen now that says that you can submit questions for the second hour of the study group at any time. We will be moderating questions during the session, so your contribution probably will not appear immediately. I will be looking through these questions on my side, picking out the questions that you have, and then trying to see if we can give you an answer on the things that we have there. Hopefully that will help you as well. So this is the time if you have questions about certifications, about IT in general, about technology, about the world, I don't know, about anything you'd like to talk about, you're certainly welcome to submit your question at any time. So you have some options there to be able to work through them. For some of you, there were a number of questions that came up about the new exams. So I think it might be a good time to step through some of those. Let me bring back some of the information we were looking at earlier, just so some of you that are still wondering about dates and times and those types of things, I'd like to be able to confirm with you some of that information. The dates and times are listed right here. So the current or most common version of the A+ exam has been, since April the 20th of 2022, the 1101 and the 1102. This exam series continues to be available until September 25th, 2025. This, by the way, as we sit here in April, this is the version you need to be studying. And I say that because it is the version where most of the information is available. All of the books that you're going to find are going to be for that version. The practice questions that are out there are going to be for that version. The vast majority of study materials that you will find on the internet will be for that version. And that's because the newer, quote unquote, newer version, but it's the one that is replacing that eventually, is the 1201 and the 1202 were released on March 25th. Is that a week ago? 2 weeks ago? This was very recently. So the amount of study materials, the amount of people who have taken this exam, the experiences available, the assorted number of study materials available on the internet is relatively small, relatively tiny in comparison to the exam that's already been out for 3 years. Now, eventually, as a couple of 3 months go by, we'll start to see more and more books appear in the market. You'll see more training materials will appear. Those types of things are relatively common. And eventually by September 25th, and we have a retirement of the 1101 and 1102, we will have plenty of study materials, but that's 6 months from now. That's a long time in this world of doing all of that. So hopefully you are thinking about this as you think about your studies. But of course, one of the questions we got was someone who asked, well, what is the difference? Is there really a big difference in these? Well, if you go to my website, I have a couple of articles that I posted on the differences between the Core 1 and the Core 2, those two different versions. They are on my website. One of the best places to go for these is probably we can start with the 1201 exam. I have a set of videos on my site for the 1201 exam. We're building those up as we go. Let's see if I can put myself on the screen here. Here's my website. And you can see the videos are listed here, the ones that are the 1201 series. But right at the top of that screen is what's new in the 220-1201 exam. And click here to read the detailed breakdown where I take you through and understand first the dates. We're already familiar with that. But then I break down this exam and what the differences really are between the 1101 and the 1201. And see if there really is a big difference. Not only do I have this as a Venn diagram on my site, but I take you through each section. I tell you what has been removed from the exam on section by section basis. And then I take you through what has been added to the exam on a section by section basis. So you really do know exactly what has been changed for this exam. It is in detailed documentation all on the Professor Messer website. I have one of these articles for the 1101, 1201, and another one for the 1102, 1202. So you really know what the differences are between all of those. Those are on the timelines. Hopefully that gives you an idea of the information that might help you as you are studying for these or trying to decide which one of these do I really take. If this was me right now and I was just starting my studies and I knew that I would be finishing up my studies in the next 4 to 5 months, I would absolutely be studying the 1101 and the 1102. This is the series that's been around for 3 years. That's the one that has the most number of books available, the most number of videos, the most number of study options, a lot that you can work through. So make sure you are familiar with all of your options. You look at the time frames, you look at what the differences are, and you make your own decision about what the best options might be. So that's just a little bit of reference of material that's available on my site. Hopefully that will give you some things that are useful, but you'll be able to make your own decision as to which one of those is the most important to use. Let's now go to the questions that you have about the exam, about technology, or about life in general, and see what your questions happen to be. Let's start with one that's more of a exam type question. If you recall from our performance-based question earlier, the performance-based question was asking 4 different issues, and there were 8 different possible causes of those symptoms that we were saying. So you could have gotten all 4 of them correct, but you could have gotten 3 correct or 2 correct or maybe 1 correct. You could have gotten a partial set of them right and some of them wrong. So the question that was given to us by Ian, Ian says for performance-based questions on the test, if you have a matching question and you match 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5, would that be counted as partially correct? Or would it be completely incorrect? This is a common question. First, let me answer the broader answer by saying we will never know. CompTIA does not explain or provide any level of detail about how their exams are graded. You simply cannot reverse engineer it. You can't figure out how many points a particular question was worth. You don't know if the questions themselves are graded differently. We do know that they are worth different points for every question, but that's about it. They don't tell us a lot about the exam. However, that being said, on the CompTIA website, if I go to that link, let's see if I do have that link here. Here we go. If I hit the right button, there it is. There is a performance-based question, frequently asked question page on the CompTIA website. Just search for performance-based question FAQ. It'll come up in your favorite search engine. There are a number of questions here about how does this work? There's a reset button. How do I move to the next question, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But down here near the bottom, very last question, is partial credit given if I answer part of a PBQ correctly? And they say there may be questions for which partial credit is offered. However, exam questions and their scoring are confidential, so no further information can be provided regarding which questions may offer partial credit. So what they've effectively said is maybe, maybe not. There may be questions for which partial credit is offered, which leads us to believe there may be questions for which partial credit is not offered. This is the problem with this particular question, is that it does not give an answer. It is a non-answer answer. In their frequently asked questions, they didn't say that they would be frequently answered answers. That's the problem with that particular question. So we don't know. We do not know if the question that we are working through, the question that we have available to us, is one that will be offering us with partial credit. There's just no way to know. They're never going to tell us. So although it's something interesting to think about, it is that theory crafting of the exam. Well, if I answer this many number of questions right, and I only have this many questions that are wrong, and I have partial credit available for my performance-based questions, I need to come up with, you can do the formula in your head. It's impossible to come up with a formula. You cannot get a combination that is in any way reliable. So there's no geometry here that works out. There's no calculus you can do that comes out to a final result. We simply have too many unknowns to be able to calculate this reliably. And to my point, and the answer I have for you is don't worry about it. Since you have no control over the scoring, there's no way to predict the score. There's no way to reverse engineer the scoring. There's no way to know how many points one question is versus another question. We don't even know if the performance-based questions are worth many points at all, or if they're worth a lot of points. We have no idea. And it's impossible to ever know. Because of that, my recommendation to you is don't worry about it. You can't control it. You can't figure it out. There's no way to figure out. And even after the exam is over, you still won't know. This is a mystery of the universe that we will never have the answer to. We can think about it. We can have theories. We can perhaps maybe it works this way, but you'll never, never, never find the evidence necessary or that you would require to be able to prove it one way or the other. You simply can't do it. That's why if you take my practice exams book, available at professormesser.com, you can go through and you'll notice my scoring on this exam. I think I have in the front, gives you a little scoring chart right here. And I tell you, just count each question as a point. Don't worry so much about the details. If you get it right, give yourself a point. If you don't get it all right, I guess you could give yourself partial credit or just no credit. The point of these practice exams book is not to emulate the scoring. The point of this book is to make you familiar with the topics that are necessary for you to know to pass this exam. So it's all about context. If you're spending your time trying to figure out how the scoring works, then you're not spending your time learning the content. Spend your time learning the content, and then it doesn't matter how they score it. You already know the content. You're going to pass with no problem. So that's my recommendation to you is don't worry about those little things. Focus instead on the important things, the most important things, which is the content itself. Get the exam objectives, use it as a checklist. As long as you know everything listed on the exam objectives, you're going to pass this exam with really no problem at all. Let's keep going through the list. There's a lot of things in the list. For people that have sent this in, I want to thank you for doing this. Of course, you can always submit your question anytime using the link that is on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to figure all of this out. So let's go through this list. So one of these things that are important if you're focusing on these, one of the things we did today was port numbers. I think it was a pretty good example. So there were a number of questions I got in the after show questions about port numbers. So I want to flip over to the exam objectives. Let me go back to this main screen. This is the exam objectives for the 220-1101. So this is the exam version that's been out for 3 years. We have 6 more months to go for this exam version. And if we go to section 2, which is networking, section 2.1 is compare and contrast TCP and UDP ports, protocols, and their purposes. And they list for you every port you need to know. And it's a relatively small list. Some of these you probably know already. For example, web browsing in the clear is port 80. Web browsing that's encrypted using HTTPS is port 443. Those are on this list. There's 443 on the list. And port 80, this is sorted by the number. So port 80 is over here for HTTP. So that means a lot of these you probably are familiar with. Some of these you aren't. Maybe FTP, port 21 and 20 and 21. SSH is port 22. Telnet's port 23. SMTP port 25, and so on. They're all listed here. So if you were trying to get the specific list of every port number you are required to know, it is listed for you right here. The exams don't go past this list. They stay very tight to the set of objectives. So you're not going to get someone asking you, what is port number 57? It's not on this list. You're not going to know. So you've been handed a list of 100 port numbers and somebody said, you need to memorize this for the exam. That is not an accurate statement. This is the definitive list. This is the arbiter of what you need to know. There is no better reference than this. So don't trust random person on the internet. Don't trust the things you read in a Reddit post. Don't listen to what I'm telling you. Go directly to the exam objectives, because that is where I will go to answer your question about port numbers. Is I will go to the exam objectives. So as long as we're both referencing the same materials and we know that is what's going to happen. So I think that's going to be a very good example of what the important topics are. More importantly, the topics you should not cover. If it's not in the exam objectives, don't worry about it for the exam. That's a good important thing to consider as well. So absolutely, if you want to work through this, absolutely know that as well. Some of you have made comments in the questions that you submitted that in the live stream, you cannot pause the video, rewind, and then move forward through it. As we are doing this live, we have indeed disabled that DVR functionality. So that, and the reason we do that is because we're doing a live Q&A, and often someone will accidentally hit the timeline information, and they'll be looking at something that happened 30 minutes ago and asking questions about it in the chat and wondering why they're not getting the most recent set of questions. This way we know you're going to find exactly the same video audio feed as everybody else who is watching right now. So everybody right now is all synced up to the same feed at the same time frame. So that's why we do it that way. Now afterwards, of course, as soon as I finish this live stream and I hit the stop button, YouTube takes a minute or two to process the video, and then it's just available for replay on the website, on the YouTube playlist. And you can, of course, after the fact, when we are not live, you can pause, you can rewind, you can fast forward. All of the functionality is there. So if you really like jumping around in the video, maybe watching live isn't for you. Maybe you want to watch afterwards and you can jump around and do whatever you'd like. It's up to you. I don't care how you do it. It's up to you. Whatever makes sense for what you are working through is the important part. So another thing to consider if you're working through challenges with live stream video, it's not a challenge. I have specifically disabled that particular functionality just so we are all on the same page, answering the same question at the same time, seeing and hearing the same thing. Let's keep going through our list. In the chat room, people are asking if resources and are my videos up to date? Is this up to date? If you're ever wondering if content on my YouTube channel or on my website is up to date, look at the number associated with the exam. My videos are always up to date with the latest exam objectives. So if you're watching and you're studying for the N10009 Network Plus exam, make sure all of the videos say N10009. Make sure the course notes say N10009. Make sure your practice exams say N10009. Make sure everything says N10009. Same thing with the current set of videos on my website. If you're studying for the 220-1201 exam, make sure the videos you're watching are for the 220-1201. Just make sure they're all the same and you'll be fine. That is an important consideration because on our YouTube channel, we have all of our videos going back to the 601 series and 602. So that is 7 series ago. We have even those videos you could go back and watch if you wanted to. I don't recommend it. Talk about an outdated bunch of information. You'll learn all about Windows NT and Windows XP. That's probably not going to help you for your exam. So all of our videos are always up to date as long as you're studying the right ones. As I often say, make sure that you are always studying from materials that match the number of the exam that you're planning to take. So if you're planning to take the 1201 exam, make sure all your study materials say 1201. If you're planning to take the 1202 exam, make sure all your materials say 1202. 1101, 1101, 1102. You just have to make sure they match. So as long as they match, you're good. That's the important part, is knowing those details. So hopefully that's giving you some ideas of what is current, what is not current. And if you're ever wondering, we always have the most current version of the exams on our website in the main menus. So you can always find those on our website. They are part of the main menu. And as soon as an exam is retired, I take it off of that main menu, even though the archive of those is still available on our site. So another consideration. More questions that you've submitted. Of course, you can submit those questions at any time. You can go to professormesser.com/QA to submit those questions. Let's keep going through your list. Let me take a quick sip here. let's have a look at other ideas. Some folks were asking earlier about vouchers, and when you buy a voucher, how many exams can be taken with that voucher. If you look at the details on our website, in fact, I'm sort of saying this with my hands. I could just be showing you. If you go to professormesser.com/vouchers, you will notice that you can, of course, pick the voucher that you're going to use. I talk about my exam hacks ebook. Here near the bottom is important terms and conditions. These are important terms and conditions. The third one down says one voucher is applicable towards one exam. Whether you take it online, whether you take it at a actual exam center, one voucher is good for one exam. So on the A+ certification, you have a 220, 1101, or 1201. That's your core 1 exam. And then you have an 1102 or 1202. That's your core 2 exam. So you have to take both exams to become A+ certified. So if you're taking both exams, there's 2 exams. One voucher is good for 1 exam. So if you're taking 2 exams, you will need 2 vouchers. There's the math. That's the higher math involved. Thankfully, no calculus, no geometry involved there. Very simple to keep in mind. If you need to take 2 exams, you will need 2 vouchers. Pretty cut and dry, pretty straightforward in the way that they do it. And there are, of course, benefits to buying the voucher on my site. Of course, it's already discounted, already a bonus, and you get the exam hacks ebook. If you are a student, let me make this point to you. If you are a student and you head over to professormesser.com/vouchers, one of the things at the very top says, if you are a college student in the U.S. or the United Kingdom, you can purchase vouchers at the academic CompTIA store. These vouchers on the academic store are heavily discounted, but you have to be a student, and they confirm that. So it's not for everyone. If you're in the U.S., I have a link over to that store. If you're in the U.K., I have a link over to that store. So just a little something. Now, if that doesn't apply to you, those discounts aren't available. You're not a student. You can't get those. That's okay. I got discounts for you anyway, and you can pick the voucher that you would like to take. For example, if you want to take the A+, you could choose that voucher, and instead of paying $253, you can pay $227. They're always discounted on my site. So that's another thing that you can think about, consider, and add to your list of discounts and special pricing. They are all right there. Let's keep going with our list. We have a number of different questions in here. There were a number of questions that people have submitted. I'm not going to bring up any specific one, but there were a number of questions that people have submitted regarding IT security. I think the code name that the industry uses is cybersecurity, although that term doesn't actually have a very good definition, at least not one single definition. There's about 20 definitions for the term cybersecurity. That's why you'll often hear me talk about IT security as one part of the overarching description of cybersecurity. Let's just talk about IT security, the security that a firm, a corporation, an organization uses to protect their data, protect their networks, protect their intellectual property, have encryption going across their network, log and maintain policies and procedures, have firewalls, maintain multi-factor authentication connections, be able to authenticate properly from wherever you happen to be in the world. All of these are responsibilities of your IT security team. And a lot of people would like to be able to work in that particular field. And speaking as someone who worked as a systems engineer for a next generation firewall company, I got to talk to hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of organizations and their security teams about their most important security concerns. And in our particular case, we had remarkable next generation firewall technology, and we were able to plug it into their network and demonstrate it and talk to them in more detail about what their biggest challenges were in the world of IT security. One of the things that I found interesting in that particular role is it's one that I worked into by having a strong foundation in operating systems, networking, and ultimately security. And in my career, I really started down as a field service technician right out of college. So I was driving around, replacing hard drives, swapping out memory, doing warranty repairs on motherboards, or sometimes just delivering printer cables. You do whatever you can to make sure everything happens. One of the things that's nice about that is you sort of learn from the ground up about hardware. Then I learned more about operating systems. Then I worked more with the networking side of things. I learned more about protocols. I became an expert in protocol analysis and network management. And I used those skills to learn about how to secure the network and the operating systems. You can't learn how to properly secure these important technologies unless you understand how these technologies work. And so it is somewhat disappointing to see the internet and third parties push people to get trained today on cybersecurity right out of the gate with no other type of knowledge in the industry whatsoever, because there are very few starting bottom of the barrel entry level positions in the world of cybersecurity as you compare it to everything else in IT rather. So it's one of those where entry level into IT security is not the same as entry level into technology. If you want to get into the world of IT security, you really do need to understand operating systems. You need to understand Windows. You need to understand all of the security surrounding Windows, including Active Directory. You need to understand other operating systems as well. You need to understand how Linux works, especially from an operating system level and a security level. And you need to understand Mac OS and mobile devices, iOS, iPadOS, Android, and whatever the next thing is going to be. Those operating systems create the foundational knowledge that you will use to understand how they communicate across the network. That gets you more into protocols, gets you into port numbers. You start to understand how to read the protocol decodes that you're going to gather to capture information from the network and really be able to see who's talking to who and how are they talking to each other. And if you understand that level of detail, it's relatively easy to layer on top of that the security piece. So that is why there are a number of questions we got this month on really understanding where to start in the world of IT security. And if I had to give you a place to start, it's not with security. If you want to get a job working with protecting data, configuring firewalls, working with VPNs, installing and configuring redundant links on your network, and multi-factor authentication and logging and reporting and policies and everything surrounding IT security, you need to first start with operating systems and you need to start with networking. And you need to become an expert in those particular areas. You don't have to know how to develop applications in these operating systems, but you need to understand how to install them, how to manage them, how to secure them, and what you can do to harden them. Because that's going to be your first foray into the world of security. So if you can't secure your laptop, how are you supposed to secure the corporate network? So knowing everything you need to know about how this operating system works and how it secures and how it communicates is an important piece of that foundation. And so that's why I've gotten some angry emails from people that say you're telling people to not take an entry-level job in security, which is not true either. If you find someone who is willing to hire you right out of school with no experience in the world of IT and they want to put you into a security role, you should absolutely do that because those jobs are very few and far between. I've never said that those jobs aren't available. I've only said that they are a small percentage of the total number of entry-level jobs that are available in the market, which is why I tell you, stick with the low-hanging fruit, stick with the jobs that are available and go with those. That is why if you are someone who wants to get into security, that's why I always tell you, don't worry about getting the security job straight ahead. Go into that first initial help desk, learn about the operating system, learn about the network, learn about how all of these things connect together, and then you will be ready to move directly into IT security. Now, if you are in a very big area, you're in a big city, and there's a lot of companies that are headquartered in your city, they will probably have a security operations center, a SOC. This is very similar to the organizations that have network operations centers, or NOCs. This is a operations center that is focused on security. And because it is such a big operations center, they're going to be taking a lot of calls. They're going to be needing to do a lot of triaging, and they're going to need to make sure that people are able to get their tickets and issues sent to the right people to solve their problems. Well, it's effectively a help desk position. You're taking the phone calls, you're figuring out what their problem is, you're triaging that issue, figuring out what the priority is, and you're sending that to the people that can handle it best. Those are great entry-level positions. They are not heavy on the world of security, but then again, if this is your first job in IT, you don't need a job that's heavy in security yet. This is a great place, though, to learn the lingo, to understand the nomenclature, to be able to understand when people are talking about when they need to perform the upgrade of the next-gen firewall, or what's involved in performing change control on this particular multi-factor authentication platform, or where is all of this information stored? What is the name service where all of these details are managed and coordinated from? And then how do we interact and have multiple links into that from every authentication point on the network? These are important things to know, but if you're just starting in the world of technology, it's overwhelming to even think that you're going to be able to grasp all of those details in 3 months, 6 months, or even more. You need a foundation first. So I tell people that don't worry so much about the world of security. You will get to that. You will work up to that, and companies will be glad to hire you for that. But you first have to build the foundation. So if you do not have a solid understanding of these different operating systems, you've not become an expert in the details of Windows, Linux, and Mac OS and mobile operating systems, you've not really done a lot with the network, you've not ever looked at a packet capture, then you're probably not ready to jump right into the world of IT security. You instead need to build up those skills first, which are fun skills. These are great things to know. Having a full and complete knowledge of Windows, of Mac OS, of Linux, of iOS, of Android, those skills alone are great skills to have and pay quite well. But then you layer the network on top of it, even more powerful. Then you layer security on top of that, and you're unstoppable. You can really ask for whatever salary you'd like, because there's lots of jobs out there that need knowledgeable people in security. And this is one of the places where you have to be ready to do that. You can't just stumble in the door and get a security job. You really do have to have the skills ready to go. So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. And please don't think that I'm trying to dissuade you from taking a job in security. It's a great place to be. I loved working in security. I thought it was fantastic. It's one of the best jobs I ever had. But this is one of those where you have to plan for it. You have to be ready for it. You have to have the skills for it. Just be ready that if you spend all of your time right out of school trying to find that cybersecurity position and you are disappointed that you're not getting a lot of calls about these jobs, well, it's because you're just not ready yet. Try focusing your efforts on something that is more rightly associated with your skill set, and the possibility increases dramatically. Your chance of getting that job goes up quite a bit at that point. Let's now have a look at other questions you have sent into the mix. We've got a lot on here. Thank you for sending these in, by the way. So we talked a little bit about time frames and how important those were. We got a question that came in and said, if I'm studying for my A+, and I need to take this exam in May or get my certification done by May, first, your time frame is very aggressive because this is already April. So if you're trying to get certified by May, keep in mind that these are two separate exams. And on average, people need 2 to 3 months for each exam to be able to be ready to take these. Sometimes they can speed things up a little bit, but usually people aren't studying for a month, taking both exams, and they're on their way, unless they already have a very good solid foundation in IT. I don't want to misinterpret that at all, because some people do come into the A+ exams, their boss has told them, you have to get certified. Yeah, boss, but I've been working in IT for 10 years. Doesn't matter. We have to have this checkbox that says you are certified. All right. Well, it probably is going to take you 2 weeks, and you'll be able to pass. You'll study your exam objectives. I know that one. I know that one. I know that one. You've been working with Windows forever. You're very familiar with Linux. You already know about hardware. You built your own systems. You've already gone through troubleshooting. It's what you do all the time. You will probably be able to coast through it. But for the majority, for the average folks coming in, usually takes 2 to 3 months. So if you're scheduling this, that's one way to consider your scheduling. Now, back to the question is, if I'm going to finish this in May, do I take the 1100 series or do I study for the 1200 series? Well, as I mentioned before, the vast majority of study materials available on the market today are for the 1100 series. The vast amount of information and experiences that people have had taking these exams are for the 1100 series. And the 1100 series don't retire until September. That's the version you should be taking. If I had to pass my certifications by May, it would be the 1101 and the 1102, the 1100 series. The one that is retiring in September, but just because the exam is retiring in September, you pass those 2 exams before September, you're certified for 3 years. So again, doesn't matter what they do with the exams if you're already certified. What you don't want to do, this is important, what you do not want to do is take the 1101 and, something happens and you can't quite get to take the 1201, and then September 25th happens and the 1100 series is retired, but you only passed one of the exams. Now you have to start over. You can't just take the 1202. Can't just take the one you are missing, but in a different exam version. Can't do that. You cannot mix exam versions. So make sure as you are working on your calendar, as you are working on your to-do list, that if you're going to take both exams, and they are the 1100 series, make sure you get both exams finished, completed, and passed by September 25th. If there is no way in your world of chaos that you are able to complete both of these by that date, then the 1200 series is going to be your only option. You should be studying materials that are specific for the 1201 and the 1202. That's it. That's my planning calendar to-do list conversation about the A+. So if you're studying for May, go to the 1101 and 1102. Don't jump over to the other version. Even though these versions are so similar to each other, and that's something you'll see from the articles that I put on my website about the differences in these exam versions. Normally, we see about a 30% difference between one exam and another. 30% of the content is new between an exam and the other, which means there's probably a little more that's different. But 30% of new content is very common. On the most recent Security Plus, 50% of the exam was new. 50, half of the exam was new. It was a rewrite, and they really did rewrite quite a bit. On the A+, though, because of what has happened over the last 3 years, because COVID happened, Windows did not increment in its normal way. And also Microsoft changed the way that they were planning for Windows rollouts. They thought Windows 11 was the last Windows we will ever have. It will just be Windows 11 and we'll just keep updating it as time goes on. Then they decided they weren't going to do that. They changed their mind. Now, they were trying, I think, to take a page out of Apple's book. Apple has had OS 10 forever. They've had OS 10 version 10.1, 10.2, 10.3, 10.4, 10.5, 10.11, 10.12, they just keep going with OS 10. But for Windows, we were used to Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, Windows 11. And then Microsoft decided maybe we will go to another version of Windows. But because of all of the slowdowns that happened during COVID, the Windows 11 was out and available when the 1100 series of exams was released 3 years ago. We're now 3 years later. There has not been another version of Windows. There's not been a Windows 12, at least not yet. So the information we learned for the 1100 series is effectively the same version of Windows we need to know for the 1200 series. Not much changed. And if you look at the articles we wrote, the 1100 series articles, I think the difference was like 18% was information. Why am I guessing? Why don't we go look? What's wrong with me? Let's go back to the Professor Messer website. We're going to go to the 1201 videos just so we can get a feel for this. I mentioned that article where the difference is, and let's look at our Venn diagram, and we can see that 13% of the objectives on the 1201 are new. 49 objectives are new on an exam with 391 objectives. Very different, like half the size of what you would normally expect. Well, that's because not much change with Windows. Almost exactly the same on the world of Windows. So you will notice that as you go through the Core 1 and the Core 2, not a huge number of changes. Now, a little bit more change. I think I have, here's the 1202 right here. There we go. So 1202, a little bit different. The Core 2 exam, you can see that 18%, that's where I was getting that number, 18% of the 1202 is new. So there is a slight increase in the number of changes between the 1102 and the 1202, but not much. Still not 30%. Still well under what the norm would be for this particular exam. So that's why I tell you, don't worry so much about the details of what's new and not new. But if you'd like to know it, we have documented it in this particular article. But make sure you know, if you're planning to make the transition, know that it's not going to be a huge shift. Then this might happen to you. Maybe you've been studying for the 1101 and 1102. Then life happens, and you're not able to do as quickly as you thought. It gets later on into the year. Finally, things settle down. You sit down to start studying, except now it is August or it's July. And you're thinking, well, I can't pass 2 exams in 2 months. That's not reasonable. But I've been studying for the previous version. We're now going to have to shift over to the 1201 and the 1202. The good part is not that much is new. So it's not going to be a dramatic shift. And these articles I wrote will tell you on a section by section basis, here's the things that got dropped out of the old version. Here's the things that were added to the new version. So you can properly do a mindset check on yourself. And you'll know as you start your new studies for the 1200, first, you don't have a deadline you have to worry about. That's kind of nice. Takes a little bit of the pressure off. The blood pressure can go down a little bit. But I think if this is one where if you are trying to get this done in a way that is going to be the least amount of concern, this is the time to do it. If you have to shift over from one version to another, this is the best possible exams to do this with because so little has changed. Still, 13% and even 18% is enough of a change to affect your final score. So again, make sure the study materials you use match the version of the exam you're planning to take. Do not study from 1100 materials and go take the 1200 exam. Do not study from 1200 materials and go take the 1100 exam. Both ways. You do not want to do that. You're setting yourself up for a problem because there will be questions you will not recognize. There will be topics that are on that exam that you will get wrong because you've never seen them before. So pretty important to be able to do that. Now, on our side, of course, we're creating video content for the entire course. So I generally do not just take the differences and stick together a bunch of videos and kind of throw out the old and stick in new things and you've got a new video. It's almost like you're wanting to redo a house. Maybe you want a new kitchen. Well, if you've ever gone in and had people come in to reconfigure and redesign and update your kitchen, you know it's a mess. First, it's expensive. They come in, you're ripping out the kitchen, and it's as much time and as much money. You could have just gutted the kitchen and just started from scratch, and it would have almost been easier than doing it piecemeal or to do a little portion at a time. And the same thing sort of applies when I'm creating these videos. It's much harder to find the section of the video that doesn't apply and remove it and then stick other things in that are new. It's just a waste of time to do that. I'd much rather just shoot a new video. And gives me the advantage of shooting the new video with newer technology, because 3 years is a long time. So our first 600 series videos were 480p videos. That's what we were doing back then. That's the type of cameras we had. Now we got 4K. We got these newer audio systems. It's amazing what we're able to do now. So that's why I like to just do a new series every time. It's a much higher quality exam series to do. Plus, it gives me a chance to really emphasize things that people have said have been challenging them. So if there's a question that keeps coming up, I'll add that into the new exam series. So the new video will have a slide or two that addresses that particular question and solves that particular issue for people. So that's why I really focus on that part of it. I'm working on these exams. So that's why I say if you are planning to finish your studies by September 25th, it should be the 1100 series. If you're not going to finish your studies by September 25th, it's the 1200 series. So right now it's a numbers game. It's a planning to do calendar numbers game thing. So that's why I would focus on that. So that's important. All of our videos for the 1200 series, of course, will be on our website. There's already videos out there. There's already things to study from. And as I mentioned, this is the 1101 course notes. Here's the 1201 course notes. Guess I can do it like this. So our newer course notes are already out there on our website. You can get the printed versions of those. I have printed versions. These were the older. This is my first run version, which had even some things I wasn't expecting in it, but it worked out great. These really, and they look so good. And of course, the PDFs are on our website as well. You have different options there to work through. But that is another concern, another thing to think about as you are planning. It's really more about scheduling at this point. There's no difference in price. They're exactly the same price to take either the 1100 series or 1200 series. It's effectively the same thing. From the score you need to get, the prices for the exams, the only difference is the content on the exam itself. Same structure, same performance-based question style, same multiple choice question style. Not much is different. So make sure you're familiar with that. They update these approximately every 3 to 3.5 years. So now you've got 3 years before we're ever going to see another A+ exam change. They tend to not change things during that 3-year period. So that makes it a little nicer too. So if you're studying for you've realized the 1100 series, you're not going to make it by September. You're going to study for the 1200 series. You've got a 3-year ramp to study for that exam. Hopefully it won't take you 3 years. Don't want that to happen, but you don't have to worry about a deadline, which is kind of nice as well to be able to work through there. And if you're somebody working on these exams and you're planning to take the exams, that is not the camera I wanted to show you. It's this one here. Is it better to take the exam in person or online? And that's really up to you. Which one of these is going to be the better way for you to take it? I like to take my exams in person just because the studio here there's too much happening here. I can't take an exam in the studio. They won't allow me to. There's too many screens. There's too much equipment. No, this is not a secure environment for an exam. And for that reason, I like to go to an exam center. But if you are someone who is hours away from an exam center, maybe taking the exam at home is a great idea. I think the idea of having someone else worry about the internet connection, the software that's running, the setting up of the room, somebody else can worry about that. I'll go to an exam center. But let's say maybe I don't like to go to exam center. I'd like to take the exam in my pajamas. I'd like to stay at home. Or maybe the exam centers are all full. Maybe they're all booked in your area. Maybe they're too far away to be able to get there. Just take it online. Just make sure you read through the requirements for setting up the secure testing environment in your home. These are incredibly important. They will not allow you to take the exam unless you meet those requirements. And you have to be very aware of what's allowed during the exam and what is not allowed during the exam. For example, if a question, you're in the middle of the exam, the doorbell rings, FedEx is here, UPS just arrived, and I need to get that package, and you get up and you leave, your exam is over. They will immediately cancel that exam. You're done. So if somebody walks in the room and walks behind you and goes to the other room, they will cancel your exam. If you're at your desk and you've got your hand in front of your mouth and they told you to remove your hand and you didn't remove your hand, or you did it and then later on you did it again, they will cancel your exam. It will be over. So there are things you need to know about. There are important things you need to know about the processes and the procedures and what's allowed and what's not allowed. But as long as you know those, you're fine doing it at home. Just make sure you're familiar with them. I would highly recommend that you read through some of the exam experiences that people have posted on the CompTIA subreddit. That's a great place for information. They will step through, here's things that went well, here's things that didn't go well, here's some challenges, here's some things you're not able to do. So that is an important consideration. And they give you plenty of information on the CompTIA website so that you will know what is allowed and what is not allowed. And it's all spelled out very clearly for you. Some folks were even asking about the virtual whiteboard on the exam. If you search on the Google machine or whatever your favorite one is for OnVue Whiteboard, ONVUE Whiteboard, you will find a page like this. It's the Pearson OnVue, ONVUE, and search for that and whiteboard. This is the first link that comes up, and it tells you what the whiteboard does during the exam. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, here's the whiteboard. You can practice with it. You can try different things on the whiteboard, just like you were doing during the exam itself. So you have a chance to try it out. See if this is something you can use. See if this is something that works for you. Maybe typing on here, typing this on the whiteboard. Maybe that's one thing you can do, and maybe you spell it properly. This also can be used with just your mouse. So if you want to write on the whiteboard, there's options down here where you can write things or erase them on the whiteboard. So you've got there's different things you could do. I think writing on here with your mouse is probably more time consuming and arduous than it really needs to be. Typing seems to be the way to do it. Board, there we go. So that's another thing. You can try that. A lot available on the CompTIA and the OnVue website. So you can try it out, see if that's something that works for you. Maybe you'll decide, okay, the whiteboard's going to work well. I'll just type everything in. Maybe you get there and think, this isn't really, I can't use this. You get to decide. And it's not going to be during the exam. You can try it well before you even schedule the exam from that website. Again, just search for OnVue, ONVUE, and the word whiteboard, and you'll find that page. You can try it out yourself. Great way to do it. It could be useful. Folks are asking, do I have the 1201 and 1202 course notes available to purchase currently? I sure do. They're on my website. 1201 and 1202 are available right now. You can download them right now. Have them on your downloaded list. In fact, this one even has the receipt still in it. I just got this in the mail. There we go. The packing label is right there. So there's your 1202, full color, all the great pictures, but specifically written for the 1201 and the 1202 exam. So those are the differences. Even though there are minor differences, there are enough differences that it will have an effect on your final score. So make sure you study from the right materials. If you already have the 1100 series study materials, you already have those course notes, and you want to go the 1200 series, I need to add a upgrade option for you, because I can give you an upgrade option with a little bit of a discount in there, so that if you finally get to the point where you are moving to a new version, you don't have to pay the full price again. You paid a little bit of a discount. So give you a little bit of a cost break between all of those. One of the things you can also do is, if you don't want to go through my annotated list of what has changed in the exam. Download the exam objectives yourself. You can compare the 1201 and the 1101, see what the differences really are between both of those. You can take either one, of course. So all of them will still be here until September 25th. So why not? You can do that right now. Very easy to do. So hopefully that's given you some ideas about things that might be useful to think about for your studies, for deciding what exam is going to be the best one to take. The important one to keep in mind is it doesn't matter which version of the A+ series exams you take. The final result is an A+ certification. It's the same A+ certification. There's no such thing as an 1100 A+ certification and a 1200 A+ certification. When you pass both exams, you are simply A+ certified. And there's no advantage or disadvantage to either one of those. It's all the same certification. So that's why I tell people, don't be in such a rush to jump ahead to the new version, because right now, not a lot of study materials available. You're going to be better off and have a much better chance of passing if you take the 1100 series right now. It's just a numbers game. Once we get 2-3 months from now, we will probably transition our live streams over to the 1200 series. We'll probably officially change the number that's on the study group to that piece of it. But to be fair, there's so few differences between the exams. Today was almost a 1200 series exam. I didn't even look through it to see if it would be applicable, but I would bet most of the questions we did today would also apply to the 1200 series. That's how close they are to be able to do that. And of course, we'll continue to have numerous study materials on our site, our video course, our practice exams, our course notes. All of these will also be available for the 1201 as time goes on. So you have plenty of options, and you can just decide what you would like to choose for your studies. Well, that brings us to, we're a little bit past the top of the hour, but I think that's a pretty good place to stop. I want to thank everyone for joining us today in the first hour with the questions and answers for the performance-based questions and multiple choice that you could possibly be needing to know, those topics you need to know for the 1101 exam and perhaps the 1201 exam. And of course, thank you so much for your questions in the second hour. I like going through the things you want to know about, and hopefully we were able to get some of that information over to you. We're doing this again on Thursday. That's 2 days from today. This was our Core 1 study group. Our Core 2 study group is on Thursday, same time, which is 12 Eastern in my time. If you ever are wanting to find out when the next live study group is going to be, you can find it at professormesser.com/calendar. You can, of course, find it on our Discord server as well in the events channel, where you could see the local time. It'll show you the local time for you in that events channel. So there's no advanced math you would have to do to figure out the date and the time. Well, that brings us to the end of another study group. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.